Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Madras Book Club. The book of the evening is People of Gopallapuram, translated by Shubashree Desikan from the Tamil novel Gopallapuram Makkal by Ki Rajanarayanan. She'll be in conversation this evening with Ramya Kannan. Gopallapuram Makkal tells the story of Telugu-speaking settlers in a Tamil village, documenting their life, migration, and resistance against British rule. The award-winning Tamil novel is by one of the most celebrated voices in modern Tamil literature, known for his deep engagement with rural life, Ki Rajanarayanan. May I request the two panelists to please take their seats on the dais. The novel vividly portrays the everyday lives of the inhabitants of Gopallapuram. Rather than focusing on a single protagonist, the narrative unfolds through a tapestry of characters: farmers, laborers, women, elders, and children. The book also dramatizes their role in the freedom movement. A love story as well is woven into the novel. Gopallapuram Makkal was first serialized in Ananda Vigadan and expanded into a novel. It won the Sahitya Akademi Award for Tamil Literature in 1991. The author, Kira, was born in a village near Kovilpatti in southern Tamil Nadu. Several writers and politicians of note today have come from this area, and Kira was one of the first. His first short story was published in 1958. He later published numerous short stories, 3 novels, and several essays. He compiled a dictionary of dialectical terms of the black soil region. He later became an honorary professor of folklore in Pondicherry Central University. Incredibly enough, he had not gone beyond the 7th standard in school himself. Shubashree Desikan is a scientist with a PhD in physics from the Institute of Mathematical Sciences. The Institute of Mathematical Sciences in Chennai. But she switched to science journalism, a very positive development for journalism because this important genre has very few qualified practitioners. She served the Hindu science desk for about a decade. She taught the science journalism elective at the Asian College of Journalism for several years. She is now an associate editor with the Shastra magazine of IIT Madras. As a literary writer, she has translated 2 novels from Tamil to English, including the book being discussed today, and also children's books published in English by Tulika into Tamil. Some of her poems have appeared in Muse India. Ramya Kannan is a name readers of the Hindu know very well. She has written on a variety of topics, including healthcare and socioeconomic development and so on, for 28 years. She is currently the health editor of the Hindu and its Tamil Nadu bureau chief. She is also into photography, cooking, baking, and gardening. She is trying to nurture women journalists. She is active in the world of artificial intelligence. She is trying to keep abreast of Gen Z thanks to her 13-year-old daughter. A word about the Madras Book Club. It was started more than 20 years ago by Mr. S. Muttaya and other publisher friends. We usually meet twice a month and discuss a contemporary book. The membership fee is 1,200 rupees for a single member, 2,000 rupees for dual membership. To become a member, you need to fill a simple form which Jayanti or Gopi of the Madras Book Club will be happy to give you. Friends, we'll now move to the main item of the day, the dialogue between Shubashree Desikan and Ramya Kannan. Their dialogue will go on till about 7:45, followed by interaction with the audience. Over to our two distinguished panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madras Book Club and my friend Shubashree for affording me this opportunity. Because at the outset, let me tell you that I am a big fan of Kira. So my journey with Kira began with, I don't know if, this is common, but in our family we had the tradition of binding books, which serialized the... So my exposure to both Kira as well as Kalki, Ponniyin Selvan, were these, bound books that like were stiff spine, but gave me a window into the past.
With illustrations.
With illustrations, yeah, absolutely. So that is why, Kira has since then been one of my favorite writers in Tamil. I will just read one line and then we'll move on. This is when, I have been reading, I read the first Gopallapuram, and then when I read this, it was as if, it felt like this warm caress, it felt like someone had touched me. He says, this is the beginning of the Gopallapurathu Makkal, which we will discuss today. This is the beginning line. கொடியில் காய போட்டிருந்த சேலையை எடுப்பது போல் மஞ்சள் வெயிலை உருவி எடுத்துக்கொண்டு மேமலைக்குள் இறங்கினாள் சூரியதேவி நிழல்கள் இல்லாத மாலை பொழுது. So the moment I read this, I felt all kinds of biological and chemical reactions happening. It was utterly, I just fell utterly in love with Kira. And so, Shubashree, I was initially, when I heard you were translating, I was like, wow, someone is actually going to translate Kira. How do you bring this? It is poetry in some senses. He's very earthy, but he's also very poetic. And I was amazed that, you were going to translate it.
To say the truth, I was quite amazed too. Actually, I jumped at the chance when Mini Krishnan offered me this book to translate, but then later I realized that it was a humongous task.
Yeah.
So
it was a task. I fully appreciate how you must have worked to bring this out. What were some of the challenges? Because it is very difficult. Kira writes in an accent that is familiar to his community, it is familiar to his part of the land. How do you bring that into what you call alien language in this sense?
That is true. Translating from, say, Malayalam to Tamil would be much easier than translating from any of these languages to English, because we are used to a certain metaphor and a certain idiom, which is not, which you have to create certain things. That challenge is universally there, but with this particular book, the extra challenge was that there are words that are used in a particular meaning in that dialect alone. In Kovilpatti they use it in a particular way, but in other rest of India, rest of Tamil Nadu, we use the same word in different meaning. So these things, partly he has indicated in the book itself that this is specific to this region.
Right.
And he has, as was said in the introduction, he has made a dictionary of terms which came in very useful. About 80% of the terms the meanings were there. But there were some words which, like the description of the cattle and all that, it just said maile kala, or it said kari. So I had to figure out what was meant by that. There was no meaning given anyway. Sevalai, things like that. Sempari, Andamari, Sempire, like that. There were names which indicated the color of the animal.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting to do. But one of the other challenges was that he would, in the conversations, he would just say something and like Ivanella and then ...
Yeah.
So how
Best
do you translate that in English?
Yeah.
So those kind of challenges were there.
Right.
Yeah.
So, apart from the lexicon that Kira himself, helpfully provided, did you have to go to sources, specific sources, in order to interpret this?
Yes, in one case, there's a person called Samuga Nadar, whose entire livelihood is associated with the palm tree. He just takes the parts of the palm tree. He lives off it. He eats it. So everything is his whole life is around the palm tree. There are some 15 different edible parts of the palm that he's talking about. I didn't know that they existed first when I did this translation. So about 3 or 4 of the edible parts were kind of new to me. So and they're used in that dialect also, in a spoken language. So for that I had to talk to some people who are from that region. So what is this Davanu? And so there was a person called Pon Dhanasekaran, who's a
colleague of
him,
ours, yes,
colleague.
yeah.
He's a journalist and from that region also. So he told me about Davanungaradu vandu actually it is Daganu vada Davanu na அவர் எழுதியிருக்காரு இதுல. So that had to be figured out, things like that. So I had to ask him. He did help me a little bit with the cover also. He said you must have initially the cover just had the woman with the long sari reaching out to that guy and the ox, the bull against the moon. It just had that. So he said you must have something of the village also, because the story is not just about the two of them.
Right.
It's so we introduced the picture of this Kamalai Kinaru. That we introduced that.
Okay. Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. And since you brought in, you've introduced the two characters, the man and the woman, let's talk about this very unconventional love story. It surprises you with its passion and its complete unconventional nature, right? So, describing that, it's the scene. There is a specific scene that's very steamy, and I prefer the English version, like I told you.
I had a tough time translating that actually.
Yeah. But these characters, the two characters itself, are, they are in some senses stereotypes, and they are different. When they come together, that relationship is a completely different relationship. So what were your impressions about...
Ramya, I think literature is a place, it gives you a space for transgressions basically, I think. And there's a lot of it that goes on in real life which we try to brush under the carpet and we ignore. Like particularly in a village at the stage of development that he's talking about, people are much more open about these things than... Right. It's not just between the two main characters. Of course, they are married to different people, and then one of their spouses dies, and then they get together at the end of the first part. That is the steamy scene that you're talking about. And they live together after that. So that is what you're talking about. And so I feel that such things are represented. There's also another character in the thing where in the novel, Sini Nayakar and Engachi. She's the one who... It has a tragic end, but they also... There's a line in which he just says they were living together even without being married as husband and wife. They were so close. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah,
maybe.
of course, yeah. So I mean, this segues into my next question, which is the portrayal of Sati in the book is a really powerful. It has the sense of an observer, an independent observer, watching this absolutely gory scene take place, and it brings in a sense of the woman involved in it, and how and the emotions that she goes through before she climbs the pyre. So this again I feel is a very, very unconventional explanation for Sati. But it's equally one of the most powerful descriptions, without taking on that burden of sati. It's as if he's standing outside and he's looking at it as an outsider, while at the same time being, cognizant of her feelings and the fact that it never happens again in that society. So it's always a bit unconventional, isn't it, with Kira? Like, you have all the names for the Palmyra tree, and it's like, snow to an Eskimo. So, but the one thing that fascinated me, if you look at the novel as a whole, I saw him bringing in change as a character. Like, just like the other characters in the Kittappan or Sini Naikar or any of the others, he brings in change or mutability as a concept in the book. Do you also feel so? Do you think that change has a large role to play? Because if you look at it, he's talking about the coming of tea. It's a fascinating, humorous account of how tea is being brought in. And then he brings in the change from millets to rice. And then there's, cutting off the tuft that boys used to have when they go to the town school. Then there's the fountain pen, and also the coming of the clock.
People peek through the window to see somebody's
clock.
To find out the time. He makes a window so that people will not
come in,
keep interrupting him and asking him what the time is. So they look through the window and see time.
So these are, they're rich with humor, but they also indicate a society in the throes of change. And I think he does that for the Tamil society so well. I'm yet to see, of course, my exposure is limited, but I'm yet to see someone who's recorded change in the manner that he has, particularly in Gopallapuram Makkal.
Yeah, the novel spans about 80 years of existence of Gopallapuram. It starts sometime like 80 years before independence, and it ends on Independence Day, 1947, August 15th. Kira, and in this juncture, I just want to say something about Kira himself. Many people may be knowing about it already. Kira's ancestors were supposed to have come from the Telugu-speaking land.
Yeah.
They came in and they settled down in the Kovilpatti. Why didn't they settle down in some place closer to where they came from? That's because they are Nayakars, and they were trained in the art of cultivating land for cotton. I think Vaiko has mentioned this somewhere. So they come and settle down in Kovilpatti region and cultivate the land, make it arable and viable, and they kind of settle down there. And then from that point, the Nayakars, so it's a settlement of Nayakars initially, and then some more people come in, and then some more, and so on. So you call it documentation of a change. So he's had these stories being told in his family through the ages, and that's how he's collected all the folklore and everything, and he's written this novel. It's something deep that was inside him that he's brought out. But another thing is that what you see as change, I see as the evolution of the village. I guess it's the same thing. That's how I was telling my Balaji, who's here in the audience. I was also telling him that the village is the protagonist in this, and not just the... Because when you read a novel, you are always looking for some key character you want to associate with, and you want to love and hate that person. So that kind of a character, single character, is not there in this novel. But the whole village seems to be the character. You're giving me a totally new perspective on it, that it's change that he's documenting, and change is the character here and all that. Yeah, that's very true. And it's an amazing, the detail, the people whom he has pictured there, and many of us have seen Bharati Raja films and all that. We will easily relate to the characters there, how they speak. We can imagine that and all that. But to see it written down like that is another experience altogether.
Very true. And the descriptions are what, get your love and, your attention. Because every time he describes, for instance, when he describes tea being brought in, and so people drink the tea and they're all asleep. They don't wake up the next morning in time to go to the fields or to tend to the... So that, that is a perspective that I have never had, having... we all drink tea, right? What is there? But I think that is a Kira touch, in a sense that, I felt.
Yeah. At the end of the thing, உங்களுக்கு டீ போட்டு தரட்டுமா மாப்பிள்ளை. That's how
absolutely.
That's how I read it in the Tamil one.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it conveys in the English.
In a sense, because of his vivid imagery, maybe it lends itself to a series or, on the OTT. I don't know. I would watch it, but
bits of it have been made into films. In the second, Sivalaperi Pandi.
Yeah.
Then there is one scene in Mudal Maryadai or something where the girl bites off the toe of the guy who's coming to molest her or something, and that is described in one of his stories in the sequel to this.
Right.
Yeah.
So you brought in this, it's a good thing you gave us a bit of history and the migration of the people, and whether we like it or not, in Tamil Nadu, caste is prevalent. Either people are trying to live within its boundaries, or people are trying to exceed the boundaries, or normalize. So whichever way you look at it, it's impossible to ignore caste in the hierarchy in Tamil Nadu particularly. So this brings to us a particular caste, describes their activities, describes what they do, and the way and the way they react, and it was frankly an eye opener. For me, I have some familiarity with the caste, but this gives me a window that's very precious and tells me so much more about their, about the quotidian. How do they live? How do they eat? How do they speak to each other? How do they, troll each other? In that sense, it was a great eye opener. What did you feel about?
So, when he comes from a very dominant caste, the Nayakars, you expect that there will be a greater emphasis on that caste. That may very well be true. There are many Nayakars coming into the picture, but somehow he manages to transcend being trapped in this thing, and he kind of describes people from different backgrounds very nicely.
Right.
So that is an amazing quality. How he got to know each one of these people so intimately that he could write about them so well. That's a big challenge, and he's done that so brilliantly. That's what I felt when I read it. Another thing is that he's also done this exquisite balancing act. Right. There's one Sokkayar who comes to the toddy shop because he's actually a Purohit, but he comes to the toddy shop for some medical reasons, apparently, some indigestion or something. Yeah. And so he's shown as a very arrogant Brahmin guy, calling everybody Vada Poda, that kind of thing. To balance this, he's put another character elsewhere who's a Gandhian.
Right.
Sokkayar hates Gandhi because Gandhi wants the Dalits to come and enter the temples. So, whereas this other guy is a Gandhian. That, I'm forgetting his name, some Iyer he is also. He wants to clean up the village boys. He wants to give them baths in oil. Yeah. And there's a very comical scene where all the boys run away from him. Every Sunday he goes to them, and every Saturday or something he gives them oil baths and all that. So they run away. The next week he goes there, and when he tries to find out what is the matter, they tell him, he catches hold of just one boy who tells him, ஐயா எனக்கு நீங்கள் வந்து குளிப்பாட்டிட்டு போயிடுறீங்க, அப்புறம் உச்சி வெயில்ல பசி தாங்க முடியல எங்களால். So we just don't want to have this oil bath anymore. Then this man realizes, oh my God, I've been doing this torture to them and all that, and he realizes that there's so much of annadhanam and all happening, but the food is not reaching where it ought to reach and all that. So that guy is shown as a very sensitive, very caring person and all that. So he does this balancing act when bringing in caste, when criticizing caste behavior also. So for that, I think he's done a very marvelous portraiture.
But similar to the campaign of bathing the boys, there's another campaign. The two young fellows fresh out of town school come. They try to shut down the toddy shops. So this is a country that lives on toddy, and here are these two boys with no tufts also. They arrogate to come and tell us what we should do and how it will impact the economy.
Yeah.
So that is another
and he brings in the very interesting, the interconnectedness of religion and the toddy shop. There's this Tiruvizha where the toddy is kept in a pot, and it has to foam and come out in a particular direction for the village to be good throughout the year. So there's this interconnectedness of liquor and society, social norms, he brings out all those things. And then how the pagadais are close to the pagadais is a caste. They are close to the toddy industry and all that, and how in their culture it's kind of imbibed in their culture. So there's all this aspect of alcohol that he brings into the picture.
Right. And did you, the question that I wanted to ask you, so why did you decide to put in a glossary at the end of the chapters?
You try translating. I'm sure you have. I didn't mean it like that. What I meant was, it was not always easy to, it would have become like Daisy Rockwell's translation of Tomb of Sand. It would have been 3 times as big, which I didn't have the freedom to do that. The simpler thing to do was to put in a glossary. The glossary has words of 2 kinds. One is, actually the word is italicized in the text and the meaning is given. Referred to. That's the normal thing. There are also some starred notes. These are end of chapter notes, and the starred ones are when the word doesn't occur in the text actually, like Kuyo Moreo. It doesn't. They were screaming and shouting or something like that. I've translated it. Yeah. So I wanted people to get a flavor of the language. Tamil readers who don't know the language to get the words right. So I wanted to keep the word, but keeping it in the text would have meant that, them tripping over it. So I've done this kind of thing. I don't know, probably everybody does it. I'm not sure, but I did it.
Right. So there is a lot of humor, as we already discussed, in the text itself, and the way certain things, it's completely sort of alien perhaps to like city people like me, people who've grown up in the city and have had some exposure but not much to a rural community and its rhythms. So the humor of it was very dear, and I'm sure you enjoyed it as well. But again, we come to translation. How difficult or easy it is between translating humor and say regular prosaic text?
It was quite. Sometimes the situation itself was comical, like the oil bath thing, where I just had to literally translate, and it wasn't. There's a lot that's been lost. Like when you read the Tamil words, you read the music along with it. Like when I said Maapla, you read it like that. And that is just not there in the English. There is no equivalent. And I just put in dots or something like that to give a kind of, it was tough. I don't think I have succeeded 100%. I may have succeeded 60%, I think. But but most of it was situational. So like the tea, the way they drink tea and don't sleep for hours and then oversleep the next day and things like that. Those things, I think it just, if you just let go of your urban conditioning and try to pick up the book and read it slowly, I think you will get it.
Right. So, so when this is a question that I'm always debating with friends who are into translations. So you also mentioned the glossary for Tamil, some Tamil readers, some people who are familiar with at least the language to an extent. But when you translate, who is your primary audience? Is it a Tamil speaking, Tamil knowing group, or are you looking at a completely different audience?
Both, I think. I didn't have just one member of audience in mind. So since I've kept both types of footnotes, it would be easy for people who know Tamil but who don't read Tamil to understand it, who know the culture, as well as those who don't know the culture. For those who don't know the culture, the footnotes are there. You may have found some of the footnotes even superfluous, perhaps.
No, but some of them were useful. Particularly and the Telugu சார்ந்த அந்த வார்த்தைகள்லாம் இருக்குல்ல, அதில் வந்து I think certainly footnotes were, because when I first read it, I might have glossed over these things. I probably didn't understand the whole text, but this was helpful in some aspects, yeah.
The Telugu, you brought up another point. I just wanted to say something about that. So, some of the dialogues are, you can call it coarse if you want, like there's this old lady who says, Neecha Pinanga. That means it's a low-born child, born of a low caste. So I didn't want to translate this. I felt very, hesitant to translate it and leave it like that. So I had a footnote saying, this doesn't reflect the views of the writer or the translator. But so that was the way I dealt with it. There's a lot of Telugu culture and Telugu smatterings of Telugu in the book, and other languages also, Kannada, and so you really feel it's more a South Indian kind of thing rather than a Tamil text, I would say.
Right. The other thing is the construct of the book itself. I mean, to me, like there is a story. One of the reasons why I said change might be a protagonist is because of the way this book is structured. There is there's a proper love story and an ending, etc., in the first part, and then the second part is about like you said, the Gramam, Gopallapuram becomes the protagonist in some senses. So this is also something unique I find in this particular text, where you similarly interested in this kind of split.
Yeah, the way I see it is that Kira is like, if you compare it to artists, Kira is to art like what Van Gogh was to Monet. Till then, there were all these people who were writing about Tanjavur and Janaki Raman, people like that, writing about lush lands which are so fertile and all that. And then he comes and writes about the meager existence that people eke out in a Karisal landscape. So, in that way, it's an art. I think it's more like a, what do you call it, a mosaic of tiny bits of information that you have to somehow detach yourself and view the whole text from far and make out the whole picture, I think.
Yeah.
That's how it's a very unique and
it is very
structure.
Unique. Yeah. So, I just wanted to mention in this, when you read Perumal Murugan, another phenomenal writer, and on the மண் வாசனை வர்ற he uses language which is so, and other people who have translated him have said that we just couldn't make out what this means. So you had to go back to the, to the author. So he also has in the more sparse landscape, the western landscape, which, where you talk about going and finding lands that are arable, cultivable. So this is, it's just a point that, I find a lot of very distant similarities between the two, but certainly as, as a reader of both works, do you also see something like that? Yeah.
Certainly. Perumal Murugan's stories, either Madharubagan, for instance, is a very, it has got a single coherent, the structurally they're very different. They're very
but
unique.
More about how he explores the community and talks about, in many ways they're similar.
Yes, they're very similar. They're very, and they really strike at some very sensitive topics without, they disturb you to the extent that you need to be disturbed, not overly so, right? They do it in a very skillful and very, without being brutal about it. They're very sensitive in handling. Both of them I find they do handle.
Right.
That is something I really found similar.
And both of them give us windows into worlds that very few people have experienced, right? It's
very local.
Very local.
And even the language, I think you were
Yeah,
that is true.
So we're talking about translations, and I think we also discussed this earlier about the textbook corporation and the work they are doing in recent years with translations, and that's phenomenal. I mean, imagine some books are already translated, but to have a comprehensive body of translated work, I think that's quite phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, it started way back in 2019 actually, when Uday Chandran was the IAS officer in charge of the textbook corporation. So he brought in Dr. Sankara Saravanan, who is now the principal of IAS Academy, and Mini Krishnan, she's the editor of the series, and her work is phenomenal, as everyone knows, and she's there in the audience there. They actually brought together some in the last 7 years. So both governments have been, the previous government and the present have both been encouraging this. It's been exponentially increasing though. In the period of some 7 years, they've done about 100 titles. And translation from Tamil to French and all has been happening earlier. Shobha Shakti's novels have been translated. But they have translated Tirukural into Maori language and things like that.
Wow.
So it's really very unique. And they have a plan, I believe, of doing in the next 5 years some 500 more titles and so on. So it's a humongous effort.
True, and one that has to be acknowledged also. Because
it's really, it's given life to a lot of masters that people wouldn't have otherwise come across.
Yeah. True. And I think we are on schedule. So I'd like to, invite you to read something that you like from the text.
This is about two boys from powerful families who were the first to go out of the village to study.
These are the guys who finally tried to do the anti-toddy movement also, no?
Yes.
These are,
Narasimhan and Kasturi.
Yeah.
Both names you will be very familiar with. Okay. So there was not a lot of opposition in Koteyar's house towards Narasimhan and in Unnakonda Nayakar's house towards Kasturi for their cropped hairstyles, the elderly women in the houses lamented, crying out Kuyo Mureo. Emira Kasturi, itta chestive. Why Kasturi, you have done so, cried Rengupati, her Telugu spilling over in grief, barely stopping short of shedding tears. In that tuft of hair, she had been seeing a vision of his namesake, her husband and Kasturi's grandfather. On the day they returned from Ettayapuram, they were made to stand outside their houses, take off the clothes they were wearing, and go straight to the well to have a bath. Cow urine was sprinkled on them and on their boxes to sanctify them. Only then did the grandmothers let them into the house. They knew that however strongly they protested, their sons would not listen if they told them not to send their grandsons there to study. Whenever Rengupati referred to the white man, she would use the phrase Nicha Pinanga, meaning lowly creature. There were many reasons for this. From her point of view, first, he was not of high caste. Second, this is the footnote that I mentioned. Second, the one who cooked for him was considered to be from a low caste here. Third, how does one even say it? Narayana, Narayana. It seems he eats the meat of cows. Narayana, Narayana. Rengupati could not even bring herself to say it and invoke the divine name. She would lament, the Kali has matured, Bhagavane. If the ruler is like this, what can we say about the ones being ruled?
Two speakers, formidably multi-talented. They seem to redefine the term 24 hours in a day. That's amazing. Thank you for that beginning, because it's a very generational image of binding books. It's not something children of this generation will even know. Two people passionate about Kira, both conscious of the Herculean task of translating his work, because English doesn't quite bend that way, does it? Especially if you have to convey a shrug or irony. It's very tough. The village, local circumstances, ground realities through language and habits, they are at the center and the heart of each experience. Thank you, Shubashree, for bringing the stories bravely, incisively translated to us of a people who essentially migrated here, built their lives and became part of the soil. Thank you, Ramya, for your perceptive questions and for steering the conversation with both speakers weaving seriousness with humor. Thank you, ladies, for bringing the importance of translation and everything that effort entails to us. I now request Mr. K. Jagdish to please present mementos to our speakers.
I'd like to thank the Madras Book Club for hosting this lovely event. Thank you.